Okay, wonderful. All right, so welcome, Bill. It's great.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just start the interview. I'm ready to go if you are.
Well, I guess you know what happens. Uh,
Only one of us can record.
Apparently, yeah, because I can't record now.
Oh, okay. If that's
Okay.
okay with you,
It's okay with me. I would appreciate if you can send me the video later on somehow.
I'll send it to you straight away. I'll send it to you on the chat. No
Oh,
problem.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. All right, that's unusual. I'm sure I've had two people recording at once, but
yeah. I thought both. So maybe I beat you before. Now you beat me.
I think so. I think that's what's happened.
Okay, you're faster than me. Okay, great. I'm old. That's why.
Uh, uh, all right. So, yeah, welcome, Bill. Obviously, I'm Oscar from the MTT, and we wanted to speak to you about a couple of things. You've obviously got a really interesting background.
A
You
little.
not apart from what we're discussing tonight, we've obviously got. Let me just check my notes here. Uh, obviously, we've got the science, computers, extinction, atheism, a lot of fields that you've written about,
Yeah,
and extensively, not just on a light basis. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but we're going into the very light topic of Cold War industrial spying.
Oh, okay. The easy one, right?
The easy one, yeah. The the uncontroversial one.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I think if we could talk about maybe your background first before we go into the details of what happened in the late 80s and early 90s. If we could
Well,
talk about where you were born
yeah,
and sort
yeah.
of some of your
I
early.
can I can summarize that relatively fast. I was born in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and when I was young, about 6 years old, my family went to the United States, and we lived there for like 7 years. Then we came back to Argentina, and later on in life, I married, came back to the United States. Started working. Well, I had other jobs in between, but I started working at Advanced Micro Devices. Got my degree. Went in there. Hello.
No, I'm here. Sorry, it just
Oh, oh.
tripped me. Yeah.
Got into engineering, and at that point in time, that's when I decided to share some information with the world, with the Soviet bloc specifically.
Brilliant.
And yeah, and before that, I had been in Argentina. I had been a telephone operator before I went to the States. That's in a nutshell what it is. After that, well, I got involved with this issue, the spying issue. Turned myself over to the agencies, and they started working with me for about 2 years, and eventually the companies I was working for, in this case Intel, found out about me. They were a little upset that the FBI didn't notify me, didn't notify them,
Mhm.
and so they told me I needed to cooperate in an internal investigation.
Mhm.
I did not. They fired me,
Mhm.
and at that point, I took some of their technology to South America and began to peddle it around. That's
Okay.
it. So there you have it.
Yeah, I mean, you've given us an introduction, an overview of the whole story. And to be honest, I think if we're gonna, what we'd like to do is maybe go into some of the detail of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but just to, obviously, great summary there. But obviously, I think you joined the Communist Party of Argentina at 21. Is that right?
So I was around 21 years old. Yeah.
21. Okay. And
One of my fellow workers took me there. He heard that, he realized I was, leaning towards the left,
uh
and he decided to make me an offer I couldn't refuse. He said, "Do you want to join the party?" I said, "Yeah." And they contacted me after that, and we worked together.
right. And so, I mean, from what I've read, your family background, your family, I think it was your father, perhaps, sort of a Peronist background, a bit right
Yeah.
wing. Used to talk quite positively about time in the 1940s and stuff. So quite unusual a background to become a communist.
Yeah, my folks were not communists. They were Peronists from Juan Perón,
Hmm.
and the whole family, really, the extended family, all of them were Peronists. And so in a way, yeah, it was a little departure from where my folks came from. In fact, my grandmother, she suspected something, and she told me, "Don't get involved in politics. It's so dirty." She had been a communist because she was in Russia in the days of the Tsar, and my grandfather was Russian, and he was in the military for the Tsar during many years. And he fought in all three armies. He fought for the Tsar. He fought for the Red Army, and then for the White Army.
Wow. Okay. And
when they
when
came
did
back
he
to Argentina, they hated communism.
I see. So when did he immigrate from Russia?
1929. He came in 1927. My grandmother came in 1929.
I see. Okay. Well, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay. So fought in all three of the armies.
From St. Petersburg.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So that explains the blonde hair and the blue eyes.
More interesting is his story.
Well, maybe we'll have to make a special episode on that one. Your grandfather's history, yeah.
My grandmother was Polish, so was my mother for that matter. She came when she was 5 years old to Argentina. So they were Polish on my mother's side, on my mother's side, and on my grandmother's side. My grandfather, he was Russian, and on the other side they were Germans. So we got the Germans, the Polish, and the Russians. That's where I come from.
Yeah. Right. Got it. Okay. That's brilliant. Okay. So, yeah, let's go to when you mentioned, obviously, you joined the CP Argentina, and then you went to the States, back to the States to start working with AMD.
We went to the States with my wife in, 1970s, July 1977.
Okay.
We went to the States.
Carry on.
Yeah, we went to the States, and we were illegal aliens. We had no, in other words, I had no Social Security specifically. That was a big headache in those days. Mm-hmm. And so I had to work with fake Social Security numbers, worked in electronics. I worked also with the Mexicans out there in the middle of nowhere. I worked for Del Monte Corporation that makes all this food stuff that they sell throughout the world, the canned foods and so on. So I worked for them, did odd jobs, and finally ended up relatively quickly at AMD.
And then you worked up the chain, got promoted fast. And then once you'd been put into a sort of higher position, for lack of a better term, this is when you started deciding that you wanted to share or give some of this technology to the Eastern Bloc, to the Cubans.
That's true. Yeah. In other words, I was what I was doing at the time was I was collecting a lot of the information, Xeroxing, getting information which I thought was important, and I said, I could share this with the Soviet bloc, but I said, I could go through Cuba, which, that was the thing I had with Cuba, right, with Fidel Castro specifically. I said, this technology is no good for Fidel. It's good for the Soviet bloc, but I can give it to the Soviet bloc through Cuba. And that's exactly what happened. My idea came through.
Right. So obviously, the ordinary person, we watch lots of spy films, 007 and James Bond and all that kind of stuff. How do you make contact with the Cuban spies? How does this happen? How did it happen for you?
Well, for me, I approached them. I went to the Cuban embassy in Buenos Aires and said I had something to offer the Cubans, and it was technology. And the consul who talked to me, right, he couldn't believe his ears. Here with this Yankee-looking guy, spoke perfect English, and he said, "What the?" And I spoke to him in Spanish, obviously. And so he was stunned, and he didn't believe me, or maybe he did. I don't know what happened, but he did not report my presence. And about several months later, about over a year later, I went to the Cuban interest section at the Czech embassy in Washington, D.C., and I did the same thing. I gave the guy a presentation, showed him wafers, which is what we use in the industry. Showed them some of the manuals that I could provide them with. Took a little bit of some of the things that I could provide them with. And 6 months later, someone approached me in Sunnyvale. I was living in Sunnyvale, California. Mm-hmm. And they approached me and they said, yeah, we're interested in working with you. We need for you to go to Mexico. And that's when we started.
I see. I see.
Them twice.
Okay. So just for clarity, the embassy, I assume, is you flew into the embassy at Washington. Where was the Cuban embassy?
The first one was in Buenos Aires. I was on vacation in Buenos Aires. I went to the Cuban embassy in Buenos Aires. Then, since nothing happened with that for over a year, I decided to try the second time. We went through the embassy. There was no embassy. There was an interest section within the Czechoslovakian embassy in Washington. That's where I went.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, actually, that is an interesting point. So the first Cuban representative sort of brushed you off and didn't really think that you, being an English speaking sort of more, for lack of a better term, gringo looking individual, wouldn't have the ideological reasoning or sort of the ideological element didn't make sense to him. Is that right?
I'm not sure what went through his mind, but what happened was later on, I found out he was recalled to Cuba. And I think he underwent some psychological testing. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
So he was penalized for that.
I see. Apologies, my camera has gone off, so I'm still here. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed.
That's okay. I think it'll come back in a moment. It's okay, fine. We'll just carry on. Okay. So, right. So he got reprimanded for that. It seems. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you started, they said you want to go. They want you to go to Mexico, and had sort of start transferring the technology across in Mexico. How did that happen? I mean, what did you take? Did you take pictures? What sort of means did you employ to sort of get the tech across to them in Mexico?
Well, the first encounter, it was just to meet, to greet us, to interview me. That sort of thing, right? So the first encounter, we took absolutely nothing. All we had to do was get there to Mexico. We met at a place, a movie theater called the Cine San Cosmos, or San Cosme, or the street is named San Cosme in the movie theater San Cosmos. Anyways, we met at this theater, and it was just for introduction to find out why I was doing it. They interviewed me essentially. Okay, it was like a debriefing or whatever you want to call it. And that was just the first encounter. Then from that point on, almost every 3 months, 2 to 3 months, we would meet primarily at the border towns, not in Mexico City, but at the border towns between Texas and Mexico. For example, Ciudad Acuña or Piedras Negras, these are on their side, right? Or Laredo, right? And Matamoros. Primarily the border towns. Mm-hmm. And we would meet there. I would go with my car so I could take lots of material in my trunk. When I went into Mexico, nobody ever checked me. So I went in there. I would give it to my contact there and at a hotel. He would take it in a bag that he brought. And there was a limo. It was from the embassy. So it was a diplomatic limo, and so they couldn't touch that. And so then he could go back to Mexico City with all this stuff, and from there it would be taken by luggage into Cuba.
Are we talking about like an actual, just a stretch limo, or just a sort of normal, sort of more diplomatic?
It was a, I don't recall very well now. All I know is black. I know very little about. Okay. But it was a big car. It was a limo, but it was a big car.
Okay, I see. So the image in my mind would be quite odd to have the Cuban embassy driving around in a sort of very stretched limo. But I guess if it was
but the critical issue was had diplomatic
plates.
That was the key. That's why it had to be like visible. So if the police stopped them, they said, "No, we're diplomats."
I see.
And they couldn't do anything to them.
Okay, so primarily then through hotels. So arriving across the border into hotels, and transferring into diplomatic vehicles. Okay, I see. Interesting. Okay, and what tech? I know you said that yes, you were trying to get this to the Soviet Union more so than the Cubans. So what kind of tech? Actually, let me just clarify that a bit further. Did the Soviets ever tell you what they wanted you to share, or did you just give and then?
I just gave. The Soviets never contacted me. They worked through the Cubans, and the Cubans did not tell them who I was. In other words, the Soviets never knew who it was that was giving them the technology. But they realized the technology was very, very important. And the Cubans just told them that they had a man on the inside. And in fact, they were blessed by who was it? Vladimir. Can't remember his last name now, but one of the guys that later on would overthrow Gorbachev.
Yes.
He was Kryuchkov. That was his name, Kryuchkov. He told the Cubans that they had done quite a coup because the information that they were receiving was very high, very useful to them, to their engineers, and I gave them really high and low tech. The low tech would end up in Cuba because they were trying to develop their own semiconductor industry, and the high tech ended up in East Germany and Russia, Soviet Union.
I see. Okay. So yeah, so there wasn't really much instruction from the other side as to what to send, but you just sent.
But I knew essentially what they needed.
Right.
I knew quite well what they needed.
Okay, I see. So yeah, I guess this now in the stories where we come to you actually going to Cuba, if I'm not mistaken, and because the operation that you were running, like you just mentioned, was so valued, was so important. The stuff they were receiving was really good stuff.
Yeah.
And so they requested that you go to Cuba and even meet Fidel Castro. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. But what happened was that they were developing their own technology and they needed some help, some pointers in Cuba. That was one issue. The other one, they wanted to train me on photography and a couple other things, so that they were worried that maybe I would get caught because I was taking too many chances. And so they wanted to give me some advice. And so they gave me some gadgets as well.
Actually, these gadgets. What did they give you?
Well, this is a notebook. Can you see it? Because I can't see you.
I can
disappeared.
Sorry. Pardon?
You disappeared.
I've gone. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think my camera has died, so we'll have to just carry on without my camera. Sorry about that.
This is a notebook, okay, and it's got a place on the inside here, okay, and you can put wafers, you can put things, and walk through the guard shack, and it's low tech but very useful, Right. And you have little devices like this is a pen. It's a recorder. I don't know if you can see the cable.
I can see that. Yeah.
Okay, so you plug this into a little recorder that looks like this. Okay, I don't know if you see it.
I can see you. No, I got you.
And so you can record things. You have also what is called a pickup cable. You can put it on a phone and record. Okay, so you have all these little gadgets which were really not that high tech, but very, very useful.
So just to clarify, the pen microphone was also from the Cubans?
No, the pen I got on my own, but I mean, they gave me a jacket, for example, that had also a Velcro split so that you could put things in there and walk out. They gave me things essentially that I could take inside the company without any risk. They gave me a small camera. I don't have that one anymore. The Velcro jacket, right?
Yeah.
And then the notebook. The notebook. That's essentially what they gave me. The other stuff I got on my own, but these are the things that I was using in those days. You needed them to record people,
Right. Well, I think this is something that, I mean, now we have obviously smartphones and our phones have got built-in recorders and you can just have them in your pocket. But back then, I mean, we're talking 1994 at best.
80s first.
80s,
Yeah, I'm talking about 86, 87, 88, in the
yeah,
90s as well, right? The early
yeah.
90s.
Right, exactly. Well, actually, we'll come back to that element of the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you then went to Cuba, obviously for this training and to meet them, as you explained. And
And
this is where.
Fidel wanted to meet the people who were helping him
Mhm.
disinterestedly
Mm, mm, mm.
because they weren't paying me. There was no money involved. It was
Right,
all ideological.
all ideological, right?
Yeah.
And as far as I understand the story, this is where uh, you start interacting with Cohen and Rolando Trujillo. So they were Cuban agents, but
Yeah.
this is where they convince you to sort of change sides, for lack of a better term. This is where we begin with the whole business of the double agents, the CIA. Yeah, so let's go into that.
Well, I go to Cuba, and I was already changing my mind about maybe 1987, 88, in the days of Gorbachev. I was already drifting out of communism for different reasons. When I go to Cuba, and I saw what they were doing or how the country was run, well, I was not very satisfied with that because I thought that there were people with lots of privileges and the rest of the country had no privileges. In other words, if you were tied to people in the government, you were part of the Communist Party, well, then you had perks. And the rest of the country just had to eat what is called boniato, which is a potato that's grown on the island. And food was a big problem as well in those days. In fact, I still think it is today. But the point here is that, I didn't like what I saw, and I said, what am I contributing to? Is this what I'm working for? I'm helping these people, and here you have these people with privileges and so on. And so it turns out that they read my mind, okay, so to speak, partly because I did make a lot of fun of a lot of the contradictions that I found in the country, and so they decided, next time I went there, which was in '92, they decided to turn me around, and the way they did that is through Pepe Cohen and Trujillo. Rodi, we called him Rolly, and Rolly and Pepe convinced me that they were dissatisfied with their country as well, and they said, "Look, what we need for you to do is to go to the CIA, and we're going to pass information to you through you to the CIA, and so the CIA can help overthrow this government." That was the story, and since I was a pretty good friend at the time of Pepe, of Cohen, I decided to do it against the voting of my wife. She voted against. But I went to the CIA. I turned myself in. They told me, just tell them everything you did. And I said, they're going to put me in prison. I said, no, they're going to work with you. And that's exactly what happened. I told the CIA exactly what I was doing, what I had been doing over the years, and that now there was a group of Cubans who were in the intelligence service that could provide lots of information from the Interior Ministry to the CIA. And the CIA liked that idea, and so they started working with me through the FBI, because the FBI handles counter-espionage, right?
Right,
So
right.
through the
I
FBI.
see. I mean, in a sense, I mean, obviously with Pepe, Roldi, the CIA, and obviously the Cuban state itself. I mean, you became a bit of a chess piece in a bit of a big game between the Cubans and the CIA.
Exactly. You always become a chess piece when you're, when you're doing that kind of work. No doubt about it. If they have to sacrifice you, they will also sacrifice you if you're a small pawn, maybe to save the knight or the bishop in your chess game. They sacrifice a pawn, and it turns out you're the pawn. And I know this also because they gave me information, and they were sacrificing people who were low-level people who were helping the Cuban governments. They were sacrificing them to get a big, to get the CIA to bite the worm, right? The hook.
Well, if you could explain a bit more there, because it is quite a complicated set of relationships where it's potentially the case that obviously Pepe and Roldi were CIA assets when they met you, and then potentially tried to get you to then turn so that you become a CIA agent. I don't know. It seems to me that there's obviously lots of moving parts to that.
Well, what happened was Pepe and Rolly were not CIA assets. No, under no circumstances. They were working for the Cuban government as the Interior Ministry. In other words, their Secret Service, their FBI, working through them, try to convince me to go to the CIA, not because they were going to give me good information. In fact, they did give me quite a bit of good information, but within that information, they gave some rotten information. Okay.
I see.
And so the issue was they wanted the CIA to believe the rotten information. Okay. So, for example, I'll just give you an example. Joey and Johnny, they're spies. Okay. And the CIA said, hey, that's good information. But it turns out they said, well, Tommy is also a spy. And what do you mean, Tommy? Tommy? You mean this rich guy? He's working for Fidel Castro? That sort of thing. And so it's like, Jesus Christ, we got to investigate this guy. That was the trick.
Right.
And that's what these agencies do.
I see. Okay. No, that makes more sense to me now. Okay. Yeah. I see. So, yeah, I mean, this is, you said, where the CIA started using you through the FBI to play out this sort of chess game against the Cubans.
Exactly.
And this is where, at least from your perspective, you were double-crossed, so to speak, by the FBI. So how did that happen?
It wasn't that the FBI double-crossed me. The way it worked was I started working at Intel. And the CIA, the FBI, they served as my references. It turns out the Intel did not check the references, or I don't know exactly what happened on Intel's side, or maybe they did check, and the FBI said, oh, yeah, he's okay, whatever. And I started working at Intel. And so as long as that was going, no problem. The FBI started working with me. They were passing information from Cuba through me to the FBI and then to the CIA. And meanwhile, I was working at Intel. When Intel finds out about me, that's when the FBI cleaned its hands and said, uh-oh, we don't know this guy.
I see. Okay.
But it turns out that since I was recording them all along, which they did not know about, they were trapped as well. So we all fell.
I see. Okay.
FBI agents as well as me.
So some of the FBI agents were also charged with something in relation to this?
The reason they did not get charged is we never went to trial. I pled guilty. Because there were no laws to try my case. That's really what happened. But what they did, they went after my wife. So they in other words, it's one of those issues where they went after my wife, and I said, I'm not going to put her in prison just to win the case. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when they went after her, that's when I had to plead guilty, and they decided, okay, look, we'll give you a low prison sentence, but we don't touch your wife. Mm-hmm. And that was the deal. And that's what we agreed to, and that's why I pled guilty. So, and they also knew that if we went to trial, the FBI would be drawn in. For example, here I don't know if you see these.
I can see them. Yeah. What have we got there?
These are money orders, one issued to my wife and the other one to me. And I got them upside down. One of them is in the name of Frank Pettyjohn. Okay. And the other one is in the name of John Grant.
Okay.
And John Grant was the real name of this guy, and he gave as an address the FBI office. Okay. This was a money order to pay me. Okay. And I never cashed these checks. Right. And second one, he changed his name, even though you can see the handwriting is the same. And he changed his name and he changed his address because he didn't want to be involved, if something happened.
Right.
And it turns out that I never cashed them. And then just before trial, I had a writing expert show that it was the same person who signed these two checks. And so they were going to go to prison as well. And this was the problem for the prosecutors. They didn't want to get the FBI agents in prison just to get me. And so they went after my wife. And so it was one of those issues where everybody had to give something in because we were all trapped.
That was okay. I see. But I don't think this is just by accident. I mean, very much from your part, very active measures from your part, because at least El Crazy Chair, the documentary that was made about you. There's the famous video camera in the oven that you did. Maybe you
Yeah.
could just explain that a bit.
Well, they would come to my house to pay me to give me instructions to say if I had received messages from Cuba, that sort of thing. And so I decided to, record them. And, you're not going to put a camera in the kitchen and wait for them. So I had to hide it. And I hid it inside the my kitchen, my stove.
Mm.
And I passed the cable through the burner, and it looked like, the toaster cable.
Mm-hmm.
And so they never found out. And I would film them from there. I have several tapes.
Mm.
And ABC used one of those for their program. But the point is, I caught him, especially when he was paying me, and I made sure I was sideways so that they could see that he was counting bills.
Right. No, you got them.
Oh yeah, I got them real good. So they had no. It was one of those things that they would have gone together to prison with me. Not only that, I have recordings from the CIA as well, and so I was subpoenaing the CIA officers. One of them from Argentina, and they said, "Well, national security."
I see. Okay, so that was their defense. Just
Yeah, but see, if you put national security, that's in your favor in a trial, because they say, well, hold it. What do you mean national security? This guy's going to prison because you guys dealt with him. You don't want to come here and testify. You don't want to be subpoenaed.
right.
So that's also in your favor.
I see. Interesting.
You have to be careful with all those things.
So with I mean, the CIA is obviously an organization that has, it's a nebulous sort of shrouded, scary associations, and it does, some shady things. But what was it like actually speaking to CIA agents and dealing with them? I mean, of course, they're human at the end of the day, but is there something else to them? Is there a particular way they operate? Is there something different or odd about them?
Well, first of all, they're well trained. Okay, these people are college graduates, so they're not just a high schooler that dropped out and say, "Okay, come over here and work for us." No, it doesn't work that way. These guys are very well trained. They know how to ask questions. They know what they want to know, and so they're very precise in how they question you. Okay. And what information they want from you, and that's when they know if you're lying or not, and that sort of thing. They're pretty good at that. FBI the same. These people are very well trained. They're not dummies.
Right. Fair enough.
But yeah, they're pretty good. You're working with professionals.
Okay. And I think there's something that we might have glossed over with the general discussion is just some of the technology. So I know that we mentioned that, yes, you were sending it to the Soviets, but I think arguably the most important exchange or transfer of technology that you did is from the 486 chip to the Pentium. The recording of that, yeah. So if you could just explain the sort of technological significance of what that was, what a 486 was, and moving from that to the Pentium, what you took, what you recorded, and how important was that?
Well, it was a big step. You have first we were working with a 386, and I was there when they made the transition from 386 to 486 to 586. 586 being the Pentium. And this was a big step because, the Pentium controls missiles, controls in those days, at least. Today they probably have something a lot more sophisticated. But, this was a huge step in the sense that, these things go in many parts of the economy. And it was a major step over the 486. And you have both AMD and Intel working on 486, moving on to the 586 to the Pentium. And so, yeah, it was important technology, but the importance was not so much. It was important to get the masks. You have several masks, what they're called masks. That means you have several layers, okay? And you take pictures through those masks, and the masks I made available to these people. But more important than that was the process. How do you process this thing at different operations? And that's, when I gave them the whole store. Essentially, that's what it happened.
I see.
So they, they had an idea what machines were being used, because I gave them the manuals for these machines. Some of them were from Japan, a lot of them were from the United States manufacturers, and all this technology just went to the Soviet Union. Okay?
I see.
That's essentially what happened.
I see. Well, and this also comes back to
you got to remember that this was over a. You got an echo there, I guess.
No, carry on.
Okay, you have many years in which all this technology was developed and how the machines were replaced at different operations. And I didn't only do my site, which I was primarily what is known as a thin films engineer, which is probably the most important part of the whole process. But I already also did diffusion. I did photolithography, etch. I was throughout the whole fab. And if I wasn't there, I would go there anyways and just take the material, photocopy it, and all that ended up in Soviet Union. So I did a good job. I mean, after several years, they had the whole store.
I see.
Absolutely, took the whole thing. In fact, you can, there's a fellow who came here to East Germany, and he looked at the Stasi, because the Stasi,
the secret police.
But from the East Germans, right? And they collected all this stuff. And when Honecker fell, the communist government, this guy went in there and he looked at the what the Stasi had, and he found all the information that I had given the Stasi.
Oh, right. So it was right there. It was all there.
Yeah,
so it made it.
And not only the East Germans, but the Soviets also had it. Everybody had it.
I see.
Cubans, East Germans, Soviets. I don't know who else, but I know those three countries had it.
Right. And I think this is where particularly the means by which you captured that tech, like the blanks and the manuals, etc., as you say, you used a video camera, and obviously at that point, under US law, there was a gap where what you had done wasn't prosecutable as in a certain sense as being theft, because what you'd done was copied.
Yeah. In fact, I had 4 arguments. I can remember at least 3. One of them is that first, Intel and AMD never patented their process. They never recorded their process. What is a patent? What is a copyright? Well, you tell the government, look, this is my property. This is what I want you to protect. And then you have protection for, say, 20 years. I think it used to be 17. Now it's 20. I'm not sure how their law is today, but it was patent law. These people don't patent. What they did, they have a secret process, but they want protection from the government. You see what's the issue? And there was no law at the time to help them, because either you do a patent law and you go and patent and you have protection for 20 years, after which someone else can build upon that idea, or you go and do copyright, if that's applicable, a song or whatever you want to copyright, and then it's civil. And it turns out that my case fell under neither one. That was the first issue. I said, I didn't steal first from Intel or AMD, because what I did was copy, and I copied stuff that wasn't theirs. That was one argument. The other argument is that I didn't steal. I was hit with the National Stolen Properties Act, and I said, stolen? What do you mean steal? If I steal your shoe, you can't use it. But if I copy, a TV program, well, you can copy it also. We can all copy it. We can all see it at the same time. So intangibles are different than tangibles. Okay. And so this is where the problem was for them, because how would they prove that I stole? They had to prove stealing. And they couldn't prove stealing. Mine was copy, and if it's copy, it's copyright, and it's a civil law, not a criminal law. Right. And then you have the issue. Then you have the issue that first, it's not Intel property or AMD's property, because they didn't patent it. Then I copied, and then the National Stolen Properties Act, with which they applied to me, is when you steal property from the government. If you steal from a company, that's a criminal case, a state criminal case. That's a local case. It's like if you steal a banana, the federal government's not going to come after you. And so the question is, I did not steal from the U.S. government, so they were screwed from every point of view.
Right. So you fell right into a perfect spot. That was exactly at the time as we were entering the sort of proper digital age, which was out there. And that's when they made the Industrial Espionage Act of 1996 in your because of your in your honor, so to speak.
Yeah. I was named in the debates in Congress. They mentioned my case. They said, look, this guy did this a couple months ago. We need to change the law. And since then, yeah, now anyone who so-called steals, which is not stealing anyways, it's just copying. But anyone, and they caught a couple Chinese doing this, if you copy something which is important, like from a company, especially in the military branch, they'll give you like 25 years now.
Jeez. Okay. So yeah, you were lucky in that sense too.
Also.
Yeah. So how long did you spend in prison?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And which institution were you in?
It's known as the BOP, Bureau of Prisons. No, I was in Eloy, Arizona, south of Arizona. The judge was kind with me and said, well, I'm going to put you in a prison which is close to your home. Not that close, but was one of the prisons which was close to my house. It was about an hour and a half away, something like that.
I see. And I mean, how were those 3 years? What was prison like?
Great. I loved it. I had a great time. Had a lot of friends there, a lot of respect. Most people are in there for crimes of drugs. 90 to 95% is just drugs. And so when you have a special case like a spy case, you're treated with a lot different.
Yeah, I suppose you're quite popular as well. You've got an interesting story to tell, right?
Besides, I helped a lot of prisoners get out. So I did a little lawyering, and at the same time, I developed my theory in there, physics.
Yeah. Well, I think this is, I mean, I think we might want to save your theory, the rope theory, and your actual scientific stuff to another time. I'd love to have a chance to discuss that with you if you'd like.
Okay. Sure. We'll do it.
So, but let's not overwhelm people. I think it's got quite a lot. We've taken a lot today. So I just wanted to go back and just think, if you had to go back again, would you do all of this again?
I don't think so. Not what I know today. No way.
No? Okay. Because of the repercussions or because of what?
No, because I have a different way of thinking, and again, it has to do a little bit with my theory. And just briefly, in those days, I believed there was going to be eventually a world government, like Marx and Lenin and the rest of them suggested that eventually the dictatorship of the proletariat would work its way to a world government. And from there, at some point, government would cease to exist. And there would be more equality, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a different theory that is we're going extinct, and we're going extinct very, very soon.
So yeah, I think this is somewhat in the right area. So we can touch on this. So what makes you so sure that we are going to go extinct very, very soon?
Oh, no doubt about it in my mind. I think the global economy cannot continue growing forever, and it's not. And what happens is when it stops growing, it's like someone wrote a book once, say, grow or die. And I think that's essentially that synthesizes what's going to happen. When the world economy reaches a plateau and starts coming down, which I think it's coming down now, and may not pick up to the glorious days before 2020. Once it reaches a plateau, then at that point, you have more and more unemployment, more people clinging to the government for help, and fewer people who work, who maintain those who don't work. And you can't continue having more and more people unemployed and fewer people employed. At some point, the system crashes. And what do I mean by that? I mean that money is no more. Money ceases to be, because you give a guy a salary, a proletarian, and he can't make it to the end of the month with that money. So money is no good anymore in that sense, because it's devalued to a point where there's no real wages.
I see. Okay. So,
and when it collapses, obviously no one produces food, because the only reason corporations produce and distribute food is because of money. And if money disappears or ceases to be, or has no value anymore, well, nobody will want money. People will want something else. They'll want food.
Yes, they want tangible things, right?
Okay. Especially food. Computers we can live without cars, airplanes. We can live without all that, but we can't live without food.
And so why do you think food production would collapse because of money collapsing?
Because if money collapses, why would a corporation produce food? Why would a corporation distribute food if money is no more? What's the incentive for a company to produce and distribute if they're not going to make any profit because money has ceased to be? That's the issue.
I see. Okay.
That's in a nutshell. Okay.
In a nutshell, yes.
I
think we'll have to have a full discussion on that in the future, because that does sound interesting. I think we'll have to go into that further in the future. But there's a quote from yourself actually that I'd like to repeat to you, just to hear your thoughts on that again to yourself. It's that nationalism is a disease you cure by traveling.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, the more you travel, the more you see that humans are humans everywhere. You know, you get rid of races, you get rid of nationalities, you get rid of all these things that humans have created, and you start seeing the world like it is, and you'll find all kinds of people in every country in the world. You know, so it's not like, if you're from Argentina or you're from Nigeria or you're from Russia, you have this personality, this is how you are. No, you have all kinds of people everywhere. You know, and so you become a little more cosmopolitan, worldly, and you know, nationalism ceases to have importance. You know.
I see. Yeah, a worldview. I suppose.
Brainwashed to, you know, when I was a kid, I was told to look at the flag, you know, and that's my flag, and I have to sing the national anthem and so on, and root for Messi, you know. And then when I go to the United States, they say, okay, now you're in the United States. You got to look at the flag there. You got to see the Pledge of Allegiance, sing the national anthem. You know, and it's like, you know, you see everybody doing these things in different countries, and everybody does it.
Right. And everyone's in their own little box there. Everyone's lost in their own world and singing to their own flag. Yeah, I suppose that would make sense. And yes, getting rid of that sort of small-mindedness would be beneficial, I think. Yeah.
People traveled more. They would talk less nonsense.
That's it. Okay. Well, Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I would love to have another conversation with you about the rope theory, and as well as your predictions on food production and the end of the world. So thank you very much, Bill.
Well, same here, and over and out. I hope you can get some sleep tonight.
No, I will. Yeah. I'll stop the recording there. There we go.